I think this ONDC has been something which is the flavor of the day. Everybody's thinking क्या हो रहा है और कभी-कभी बहुत anxious है कि हमारे को क्यों नहीं दिख रहा. Why are we not able to use it? Thank you. I think somebody gave me feedback. Don't talk in Hindi. I can't make out. Somebody did, and I will not make it anymore. Right? I got this feedback. Thank you. Thank you. So I think I was always worried that we sometimes get up to speed on things which is maybe theoretical by nature. We need to figure out what we need to do. So I think what we are looking at, ONDC is doing a fab job. What can fintechs and banks do right now to get embedded into the journeys and build for it? So I think before we start, I think Arvind has been sort of leading the whole ecosystem and helping the digital India to get built, and he's also on the board of ONDC as well. So I think I want to understand from your perspective, Arvind, what ONDC is, what are the current challenges the sellers and buyers facing, what are you solving for, and maybe a quick context of what is current rollout which is happening.
Thank you, Samir. Good afternoon. And if I can request that we can close the door at least, or just so that the people inside can hear what we are saying. But let me start off by saying that you said the adoption of Samir. You started by saying the adoption of ONDC vis-a-vis others as we were. So let me take you back about 6 years ago, six and a half years ago, when we were launching UPI. Today, there is nobody in this room who would not be using UPI, unless you are Ankit Patel, who has come from New York, or Mohtana, our friend minister from Jordan. They probably are the only ones who are not using UPI. Everybody else is using UPI, right? But we had only 6 or 8 people, or maybe 10 people, a handful of people who believed in UPI in 2016-17. Now, after the success of this whole digital public infrastructure, this whole approach of the government in building population scale platforms, what was another problem that was remaining to be solved? And that is ONDC. One of the problems was that we still have, about 40 million people, kirana stores, small stores, MSMEs including, who are excluded from the digital revolution. And I'll talk about digital Bharat when I, in the one of the next sessions that you've said. And that I think we should do in Hindi. But I'm just kidding. Because, it is, there is a lot of people who are excluded. Now, the exclusion can happen not on the payments front, but actually participating in the digital selling and transactional ecosystem. Payments, everybody is accepting on a digital front today, right? I mean, that I think is a given. If you don't have a QR code, you don't do business today. But they're not, they're not really on any of the platforms which help them sell more and enhance their market, right? So the government, during the COVID years, realized that the hyper-local, the kiranas, the small businesses are, if I can use the double quote word, captive to certain platforms, and that is prohibitively expensive for them to participate in that. So one reason is it's not easily available for them to participate. 2, it's very expensive for them to participate in this whole e-commerce revolution, the e-tailing revolution. So the government thought that how we can come up with a now, and that's where ONDC came about, actually in about mid of November 2020, mid of 2021, is how we can come out with a protocol which decouples the buyer, the seller, the logistics, and enables a market where everybody can participate. Democratizes the e-commerce market. So now, so first of all, ONDC is not a platform. ONDC is the invisible layer that connects. It's a protocol that connects a buyer, a seller, and actually a logistics provider. 3 people they bring together with a common protocol. So it's equivalent to the skin could be anything, the front end could be anything. And that's really what India has perfected in this whole UPI, CoWIN, technologies, the digital public goods, population scale, skin can be anything, front end, back end can be anything. And here it's complex because we're not only just delivering a bits and byte transaction, a messaging transaction, we're actually delivering physical goods in most of the cases. So we have a logistics provider. So 3 people coming together, but each working to their strength. That's the key thing. Because on a platform, you're spending a lot of money onboarding the sellers, and also ensuring customer retention and that whole experience. Here we have decoupled that. Buyers, and we have a buyer application right here. Let's say we have sellers next to them, and we have the technology in between. So I have a great panel. Thank you for putting that together, because this panel can tell you exactly that if I am a buyer, I am going to just focus on buyers. If I am a fintech, which is doing a lot of payment transactions, I'm just going to focus on that. And then now I have more offerings to give to my consumers. The consumers that I've already, already offering them 10 other products or 15 other products, they're already on my app or my system. I have another thing to give, is to give them hundreds of choices of consumers without to worry about onboarding these 5,000 merchants, 10,000 merchants. Two, completely unbiased. The technology provider will tell you, if you send a search on ONDC, it is not dictated by biased algorithms. Now that's a very key thing. That means if you need to be discovered, you will get discovered. You don't get discovered because of certain rules that are only known to the platform providers. And three, it is much lower cost. There is a cost associated because there's a buyer side which will take a little bit of money. There's a seller side, but if you are currently operating, if the merchants are today giving 20 to 30%, or restaurant owners are giving 20 to 30% of the transaction cost to the platforms, that cost is going to drastically come down to 1/5 to 1/6 of that. And the government's public population scale mindset is behind it. So, as I said, three things: decoupling, democratizing it, making it population scale, making sure there is completely unbiased discovery based on price or hyper locality, means location, and that's where we are. On the last front, and then I'll leave to everybody else to comment on the rollout. Where are we? As I said, there are more people today interested in ONDC than we can handle actually. So the interest is immense in the market. We've done a lot of beta testing in one of the toughest markets in India, which is Bangalore, because they're consumers and they're techies, right? And they critique everything from both the lenses. So we've tested there. We've discovered what we are doing well, what we are not doing well. I buy my stuff in Delhi all the time through ONDC, through Paytm front end, and I don't know who delivers. I actually have no idea. Like I should not. I just use a front end, make a payment through Paytm, and buy it. But yes, the idea is over the next 4 to 5 months, within February, March, we will have what is called the beta live going at least in 5 to 6 more cities. And over the next, the first half to almost the second half, the early part of second half, June, July timeframe, you will have a national rollout. That's where we are. We have, interestingly, as I said, people on this panel who are actually onboarded on ONDC. So there are more than 2,000 merchants that you can buy and sell things from, and buy things from on ONDC right now.
And in Mumbai,
actually, I was checking. You can buy things on Paytm at least in Mumbai also. So
okay, so there's homework for all of us, right? Try karte, we'll figure out, right? So thank you. This is good. This is good. I think I'll move to Bertram. We spoke about what it is, but you're building the platform for it. Maybe can you define what a platform would mean in this ecosystem? What are you building for, and how when banks and fintechs can actually utilize it?
Thanks, Amir. I think to start with, I'd just like to correct the word platform. Like Arvind mentioned, ONDC is not a platform. It's a protocol and an ecosystem. So in fact, platform is the exact opposite of what we're trying to solve for.
Okay.
So starting with that clue, Protean has basically been building platform and digital and infra and open protocols for the last 25 years. Around 2-3 years ago is when we started our first journey with the Beckon protocol. We built a gateway and a registry in Kerala, in Kochi, and we ran this open mobility pilot, which has done phenomenally well. Even today, you have hundreds of rides happening every day, no incentive, zero commission, cashback going to users. So that's just proof that Beckon as a technology works. Some of that learnings we brought into ONDC, and we have seen very, very good scale in terms of our capacity to build this infra. The number of participants, like Arvind touched upon, are immense. So I think in the initial wave of rolling out something as complex as ONDC, it requires multiple buyer companies, seller companies to understand the protocols, understand the tech, integrate, Also understand how cascaded transactions work when there is a third-party logistics firm who's delivering. And groceries or hyperlocal, which we're solving for now, is just the first use case. We are actually looking at bringing in taxi rides, mobilities, autos, fashion, electronics, B2B. The list just goes on. So there is a long roadmap that ONDC has to solve for, and we are extremely proud to be part of it.
Maybe you can define.
Can I interject just to give, so what Bertram said is, one thing you have to understand, the government also is putting complete might behind it. So how many of you know GEM? Anybody heard of GEM here? GEM is going to become ONDC compliant. So everything that we are doing transactional, whether it's a government system, first of all, we have to be adopters ourselves. So even GEM, I just wanted to add to that GEM is also going to get ONDC compliant. We are doing a biggest, so all those billions of dollars of transactions that happened on GEM will happen via ONDC.
Okay, so Bertram, I wanted to know when you say protocol, and you also spoke about the ratings of the merchants, and so what all will be available as open API with a consent layer for banks and lenders to work on, and what are the opportunities you see for them to get embedded fast into this ecosystem?
Right. So Gateway being at the heart of the ONDC ecosystem, today we look at the ecosystem in kind of 4 quadrants. One is the B2C ecosystem, where you look at buyer apps like Spice Money, Paytm, so on. We also see the B2C seller ecosystem, which is Kirana shops selling to individuals like us. And what's starting to emerge is the B2B buyer ecosystem and the B2B seller ecosystem, which is more wholesale commerce happening on ONDC. So in each of these 4 quadrants, there's a lot of progress that's happening as we speak. On B2B, it's very early stage, but on B2C, it's something which is currently available on about 4 or 5 apps, but we expect that list to grow immensely in the next 1 year. So just to answer your question, beyond the reconciliation, beyond the gateway, we also have a reconciliation and settlement kind of a framework which has been conceptualized with the ONDC team to enable buyers and sellers to also settle funds between each other. Because this is an open network and it's not like a typical payment gateway where you collect money for a merchant and settle on T+1. Over here, you're collecting funds on the buyer app like Spice Money and you're settling money to a completely different entity which you do not have a contractual agreement with. And you have to ensure that the money moves as per the designated payout time. And if there is a dispute, you are able to trace and have clear accountability. So we're putting a very robust framework around the reconciliation and settlement. And to your point on the scoring and rating, so there was a initial thinking behind how do we build more trust with sellers? Because you'll have a lot of small sellers, a lot of startups, a lot of shops may just come onto the network and start selling goods which you do not want to have any bad connotation with them. So how do you bring in that policing around all of this? And we decided let that network decide, which is in the true spirit of an open network. So buyers will be able to set ratings for these sellers. And at scale, when the seller starts receiving multiple ratings, it's like your Uber driver. You start seeing the guy has a 5-star or a 4-star or a 3-star, and then the choice is in the hands of the customer. So this rating ledger will be built by multiple participants in the ONDC network. It's being created in a very democratic way again. And eventually we also see this seller rating having very rich data, which may come onto the AA and OCIN framework to help with lending to these sellers.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think very useful. So I think moving from that side to Sanjeev, you are building for rural, and you're also onboarding customers and merchants on board of this platform. So maybe from a merchant, I mean, for example, if you're from Kanpur, you would like to eat kallu ki chaat. It's difficult to eat kallu ki chaat because you don't know how do you find him, right? There's no way. So how would you help, would this ecosystem help those guys who are in rural societies and all, having just small shops and all to come on board and still sell? And how can they be identified? So and maybe since you are also in Fintech, so credit kaise jayega? Any thoughts on that?
Sure, Sumit, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I answer your question, I want to pick up what Arvindji said. So fundamentally, what we are doing is we are using digital goods available today to solve for delivery of a financial and digital service. So for example, 6 years ago, you couldn't imagine somebody transferring money here in Bombay and somebody in the village taking out money the next moment. It can happen today. Right? So we have a network of 1.2 million entrepreneurs across 2 lakh villages serving 25 million consumers, rural consumers on a monthly basis for basic access of banking, payments, digital services. Now, what happened? We actually used the public code available, the India Stack, and we've democratized it. Now, coming to ONDC, and like what Arvind said 6 years ago, something like that could not be visible to us. Same thing here, we see an opportunity, and there are 3 large opportunities that we're seeing. First opportunity is that since we are a buyer, there is a rural consumer sitting in a village who gets an opportunity on a platform to buy products which were not available in his neighborhood. First. Second, the merchants in rural India, the kirana stores, the local stores, right? They were not on a digital solution. Now what would they do? For example, if they have to buy a mobile accessory shop, he wants to sell earphones. What does he do? He goes to a district headquarters, he buys the stuff from a distributor. The district headquarter distributor goes to a state headquarter goes to Delhi. That's the chain. What if I now onboard that kirana store on a platform, digital platform, when he's a buyer, and I add sellers sitting in Delhi, Bombay, and now you know what? He gets the access to a larger inventory, much better pricing, at his doorstep in a village to sell to a consumer in rural, which is very aspirational, let me tell you. Second use case. Third, there is a lot of local manufacturing that happens in this country, which is unique. The scale of that distribution was limited to whatever that person could do, which is in his neighborhood, maybe 10 kilometers, maybe to a district. Now today, what if that is what the MSME story is. What if I onboard them as buyers? Now imagine somebody sitting in remote part of Bihar can sell his products onto a platform, and somebody in Chennai or all across India, anyone as a buyer can be buying it. These are things, stories that couldn't be imagined earlier. And that's what a digital public good like this gives an opportunity, and we see that as very, very strong player to use and make use of this digital public good for the 3 use cases that I just spoke of here.
Maybe quick point on, you're already rolling it out. So what's the experience right now? What is happening on the ground?
So we've done, there are 2 parts to this. We've done as a buyer, we started in Bengaluru. We're moving to other cities now. We want to open it to my network, and that's exactly what a phase that we are moving to. So for example, there are a lot of sellers who have come who are now delivering to many pin codes. So now we are opening it to a larger network. And on the kirana store, on what I spoke about the B2B, we are going live. We're starting a CUG in this month itself. So it's a phase-wise, but we're very, very excited about this journey.
Thank you. And Mahesh, I mean, from a banking perspective, if somebody taught India what APIs are, from a banking perspective, it's Yes Bank. I mean, the kind of phenomenal work you've done over a period of time is critical for us to appreciate. I mean, I can tell you that even today, the baseline of engineering work done on API is still Yes Bank, right? So my understanding is that all the work which is required is around banks to get deeply embedded on both payments and credit inside the ONDC framework. So maybe you could quickly talk about what work Yes Bank is right now doing, and what value do you see for banks to get deep, and banks can be banks and lenders both, to get deep inside ONDC?
Thank you, Sameer. I think it's been obviously a great journey for Yes, going through its roller coaster ride. But I think back again, we are hitting the ground and running at good speed. I think what's more important here is ONDC has given us a great opportunity, like what was just articulated by my co-panelists. Is fantastic in terms of the opportunity it gives as any organization, any bank, any financial institution. At the core to any of the banks is the trust, because it holds the money. Now, which means any payments that you make have to pass through the banking ecosystem, whether it is you pay or whether you lend. So it is both. And I keep it very simple out there. Now, when you do it, when you look at these base fundamentals, you are essentially now looking at the common infrastructures that are getting created by the government of India. ONDC is going to really allow us to create an e-commerce ecosystem, which essentially is going to bring the both buyers and the sellers together, and the logistics provider, which means that there is going to be money movement across the ecosystem, which gives us the fantastic opportunity for a financial institution to embed itself in that journey first. And that's a simplistic use case. So which means enabling its customers on one side to pay, enabling its own merchants to be able to sell the goods, and more importantly, create multiple other downstream use cases, which means that when you do look at credit, when you look at logistics, ULIP that you are now embarking upon, trust me, the kind of infrastructure that is getting created, banks should envisage what it will look at 12 to 18 months from now and being ready for it, which means that be able to work on the triage of Oaken to try and ULIP, account aggregator. If you look at all of these capabilities and soon a fraud environment, fraud database, look at the power that a bank can utilize to not just enable payments, but also to lend. And it need not be at a big ticket. It could be that micro segments. And given the fact that at the end of the day, it's money movement, it is payments, it is going to be very critical for a bank to look at the future and start building towards it. And today for us, it is a part of what we look at, I would say, internal innovation to support our business growth. It may be, there's a lot of naysayers always there on the plate, but what is most important is to look beyond them. Is to look beyond and see what's the opportunities coming on the way. And I think today India is leading the way in a lot of this. Now, I truly believe in Make in India. These are the kind of tech innovations and capabilities that the government of India is building, and banks can lean in on this to drive significant change in the ecosystem. So to me, I think Yes Bank has carved out what I would call it as an entire focus on innovation, focus on building its capabilities and enhancing what we probably do it as, we did 1.0, now it is actually, we call it 3.0. 2 is missed, so we call it 3. Because for us now, 3 is all about where we need to be for the ecosystem 12 months from now. So I think there is huge opportunity for us both sides, the buyer and the seller, and connecting that whole ecosystem, how we are being in the center of it, with the customer being in the center. The customer could be an individual, customer could be an MSME, small kirana shops. You have a huge opportunity given the kind of infrastructure build out that's happening. I think it's a great story for us to come together. And for any bank that is looking to go retail, go niche into the spaces, why not? Collaboration, partner collaboration, looking at tech, bringing it all together. It's a story that cannot be missed. And I'm sure the world will look at us and say, how do we create some noises, but I think we should overcome that and actually go fast. That's all I will say.
Thank you. So, Arvind, while there's talk about current rollouts, I think 2 pointers I want to know. At scale, what will happen in what duration? So, what is the vision? Of course, the reality will be different and we'll see all through, right? It can be faster or it can take more time. But genuinely, it's for the greater good. So what time do you think that it will take and what scale it will take? The second question, which is linked, is how is it closely is it linked to economy, right? Because finally, it's about economic growth, right? I think, so how do you link these two? Because finally, we have to grow, right? And growth is linked to MSME's growth, right? And people think that these guys are cheaters, they are this and that. There's always a negative connotation about MSMEs, and the credit is always an issue. So how the whole things work?
Excellent stuff, Sameer. Let me first start. When you say growth, see, the beauty of ONDC is, as Bertram also explained, it's a protocol sitting in between. So how will, if I am actually going to monetize, I means this whole ecosystem, it's going to monetize the existing customers of Stripe Money, Paytm, PhonePe. So they have a user base. So it's a very captive user base for them. So they're going to service their user base with a host of new products which are probably coming from a seller app, a Grow Frugal, or whosoever else coming as a seller app. Now, but as a larger picture, three or three economic points of view. Number one, you are seeing only about, and you know, your data, or over here somebody can educate us what their data says. Our data suggests that we have the unique, actual e-commerce transactors, people who are buying and selling things on e-commerce is about 12 to 14 million people, 120 to 140 million, about 12 to 14 crore people in India. But the people who are aspirational and actually doing transactions is 3 to 4x. So that's almost 500 million people who actually are transacting and making small non-digital, non-e-commerce payments. And those are the people that can be served. So the growth that currently exists within the ecosystem, we just have to connect the two dots, right? I mean, a buyer side is struggling onboarding people, and the seller side has trouble acquiring customers. Here, there is both existing in two disparate systems. We are bringing them together. So the growth of this will come very fast. Two, he already explained B2B, B2C, and I said government is coming forward. But you know, MSME example. We are seeing, and this is a live example, by the way. The UP runs a project called One District, One Product. Nobody outside UP knows it. Because it's very difficult for the small MSMEs to sell to a national market. ODOP is coming on board, ONDC is already onboarded actually. So now sitting in Tamil Nadu or in Bangalore, you can buy that small district product from where you and me studied in Varanasi. And that person is getting discovered in an unbiased manner. Three, what is happening is suddenly, because today no longer you are captive to this pricing of 5, 10, 15, 20, people are rediscovering pricing. And all the FMCG brands are saying, I can actually charge 13 rupees, I can charge 18 rupees. So payment is digital, right? So no longer you're getting toffees back and you need to give toffees back or do anything else. So the FMCG brands are saying, can I now enable all my touch points? Where I will enable them. They don't need to come themselves. They don't need to invest because I want to promote my brand from that Kirana store. So we are seeing a host of FMCG brands who are coming directly as a player and enabling their network of 30,000, 40,000 touch points to come on ONDC. I can't disclose the names, but at least 4 biggest FMCGs of India are coming on board. And they are bringing the Kirana store. Now, what is this going to do? I mean, you understand. And that's the macroeconomic question really, right? Number one, more efficiency into the system. People keep more money with themselves, what UPI did in terms of payments really, right? So instead of that money going to external parties, it remains in the system, their market expands. There is an expansion potential of their selling from the current levels, we believe, of e-commerce being at about 4.5% of the whole retail thing in India. We believe it will in the next 2 to 3 years reach about 15%. That's a 4x growth we are believing that it will happen. And I mean it plus or minus in terms of years, but that's the growth that we see will happen. And to participate, the MSMEs benefit, the government benefits. Economically, this is the biggest engine that, from a retail perspective, that you're going to see in India. And believe me, anybody who's in retail, e-retail, whether it's mobility to food delivery to hyper-local grocery, either will participate or will get disrupted. I'm making a very, very bold prediction on this.
This is phenomenal. Phenomenal. I think we heard about ONDC only a year and a half back, and within this period, getting a rollout done and then talking about vision is brilliant. I think, Bertram, from your perspective, there's also a lot of data sharing which is happening in this whole process, right? And given very, very clear guidelines which are coming, the bills which is coming on privacy. So how will it all work together? Because data is getting shared across too many entities, and logically so for the better movement of better experience to the customer as well, both sides. So maybe a quick input on that will be useful. And do you see any bottleneck coming up, because everybody will become a LSP, right? Technically, because it will originate from somewhere there. So any regulatory issue which maybe RBI has to take care of to enable that out?
So to your first question, I think today, the way ONDC works as a protocol, the gateway enables discovery of buyer and seller. But once the discovery and the two parties do a handshake, they talk directly to each other. So there is no central pool or ownership of data, one. Second is each buyer or seller entity will have their own repository of data based on their own transaction pools, which is anyway what's happening today in the market. And each one of them will use those data pools to enrich their ability to lend to their customers. So I think personally, there will be a very good feed of alternate and rich data because ONDC data is much richer than your payment gateway data.
Agreed,
Your
agreed.
PG data only says debited for 1,000 rupees. Here it will say what was the product that you purchased. You bought a shirt, what size, what color.
And what feedback you got.
Right. So all of that data going to a buyer app or to your banks allows them to further hyper-personalize their ability to target you, to position credit offers. And similarly, if you're looking at B2B, that rich data going to sellers, going to kind of LSP platforms to come back with loan offers to the customer. So I think it's going to be a very open market, and the good thing is that the customer really benefits from it. Within the data privacy framework, it will always operate within what is laid out by the regulator. And I don't see any change to how that will happen. It will operate under the existing account aggregator and data guideline regimes. So there's no issue or challenge or bottleneck there.
And you've also been a banker, right? So your perspective on how banks and fintechs can quickly onboard, right? So a quick thought process will be useful.
No, that definitely is a question I wanted to answer. I think there's so much potential that I really see in ONDC taking off my current hat and wearing my previous hat. On the consumer-facing side, there are so many banks who have taken a very forward leap in digitizing their bank apps with more B2C engagement. So today, I think a lot of banks have found engagement is something they're losing out to the big techs. And they're kind of being used only when the customer needs a loan or where you want a statement download. How do you bring your customers back into your app? How do you retarget and how do you kind of cross-sell products to them? So there is an opportunity for both banks and fintechs there. On the other side, I think for fintechs, there are so many elements in the value chain now. If you really look at buyer, you look at seller, you look at MSME, you look at large organized retailer, you look at integration aspects into ERP systems, there are so many blocks. And I think as Koshi from ONDC beautifully articulates, this entire ecosystem is being built on a Lego block kind of an architecture. There are some fintechs who are beautifully solving for one piece of the Lego puzzle, and they're taking it to the market participant and saying, here's my Lego block, plug it into your scheme of things. So I think if fintechs out there are able to find that strength and find which Lego block they need to solve for, we are very happy to work with them, give them whatever guidance and protocols that they need to help them create their own markets. So it's a very, very large opportunity. Think of it as digitizing the undigitized across sectors. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. No doubt it will be a long journey, but I think if they start now, the learning will come in sooner.
Brilliant. Sanjeev, from your perspective, again, you work across the country and primarily on inclusion side. So how would it impact inclusion on an overall basis? I think how it will span out over the next 3 to 5 years on the journey, right? Because credit has not reached, and wherever in rural India credit reaches, suddenly the growth happens, right? So, and many of these nano entrepreneurs are actually looking for it. Even I feel very sorry about it, but honestly, you look at, I used to stay in Santa Cruz East, and in front of me there will be a lot of guys who are actually standing outside because they are carpenters, they are actually doing some small work, and they have to stand in the mandis literally to get the business in. So how do these nano entrepreneurs get onboarded on it? Because that is where the power will be. बहुत बुरा लगता है, they are waiting for it and getting sold on the day or walking back, where the pricing is available, people will buy directly from them, but they don't know who they are.
Sure, thanks. Sameer, see, in my view, and I'm going to talk particularly about rural, actually democratization of commerce is going to have a very, very large impact on financial services consumption as a business. It's going to have a very, very large, and if you want me to explain it, I can tell you these are all live examples that I see today. So there is, in our own network, 70% of the network is below 30 years of age. So it is the youth who's driving change, who's adopting to these technology platforms faster than before. Now, imagine all of these Kirana stores, when you onboard them into a platform, you are digitalizing, there's an opportunity for them to do a digital transaction in terms of buying and selling, which means there is a financial services rail under it, which means there's an account, there's money flowing in, that gives you an opportunity to give them credit, there is insurance. It doesn't, what it brings out is an exponential growth in overall financial services in rural India. And that is something that I think this is going to add to what you said, how does economy benefit? So it's not going to be only about digital adoption. This includes financial services penetration into rural India. And I'm talking about merchant community primarily and the MSME space. Something that I think been devoid of primarily because of lack of formalization. And that is going to help in this.
I think you're driving company itself. How much will it reflect on your business model as well, right? I think a lot of things when new innovation happens, it's a sidekick to most organizations. How central would ONDC or how central is ONDC to your own business model? Very frank question. It is not in the script. I thought let me ask.
So if Koshi was here, he would tell you. He would answer it on my behalf. But this is very adjacent, if not overlapping to a large extent on our rural footprint that we want to build. We have a 1.2 million entrepreneurs today who are Kirana stores or local stores who are doing assisted services. Now we're going to onboard them, all of them as a buyer. And then there are merchants around them, we're going to onboard them. And I'm talking of 6,500 blocks and the 6 lakh villages. This is what, when Arvindji spoke about 4 crore small Kirana stores, right? This is the unorganized sector, and I'm telling you that's the opportunity. There's one more opportunity I want to talk about which nobody understands here. So when you go to rural India today, there's a lot of youth who wants to get into entrepreneurship. They're looking at opportunities. Now and they're very digital savvy. Now platforms like this give them an opportunity to start a business. So example bata raha hu, if somebody wanted to start a mobile accessory shop, he would say, where do I procure it? He would say, I have to go to a distributor. Where does he find it? Today, on a digital platform, he can start a business. So there's a lot of entrepreneurship that you are creating. And that is going to happen on a public good like this. Sorry, you want to say something?
I'm going to add to that, and Sanjeev just said the very critical thing, and I was too excited to add to that is, does everybody understand CSCs here? Common Service Centers. Do you know how many centers we have? Anybody right guesses? 1,000. Okay. 100,000, still way off. 1,000, 100,000, any other number? 300,000, 350,000 centers. And these are active centers. This is what is going to do what Sanjeev just said. So if I want to become a micro village level entrepreneur, I come on CSC is on ONDC already. I can start doing business and assisted commerce right there and then only. Both sides. Buy from my end and then sell as an assisted commerce locally.
In a bank, the most, again not scripted, miserable job is a CIO's role. कौन क्या पूछ लेता पता नहीं है. I think I said 20 years back, you had no channels, only branches to service. Okay, you had a static framework, or maybe you didn't have an app. You didn't actually have a core banking. Maybe you implemented core banking maybe 20, 30 years back. Then you moved to improving the operations. Then we moved into our own channels. So internet banking came, mobile banking came. And finally, security guys said, okay, we will do it, allow you to open your architecture only for your own channel, and we'll actually whitelist only that. Now we are in a new game, right? And the new game is, I have to open up my platform for my channels. I have to open my platform for my fintech partners, neobanks, all the digital lenders coming across. And I have to open up for ONDC kind of framework, which are expecting different scale of usage. One request to all of you, I have been a bitter critic of cloud, but in the current context, you have no choice, okay? So if you have not, time is now, so therefore we had a session on cloud because I thought time is now, so you should do that. But I think how do you manage such a complicated environment and how much is misery ahead as a CIO? I call it misery because I've gone through it, I don't want to become a CIO ever again.
So I think we've been through that journey before also. But I think it's about the CIO, the role of the CIO essentially has to evolve itself. And it's up to the CIO itself to be understanding what's the future looking like, right? There is a bunch of commodity capabilities that you need to create. Now, earlier we all thought of core banking as your crown jewels, correct? We used to call core banking as crown jewels or whatever, tier one, critical apps and everything. And we continue to do it. But I think what we really need to understand as CIOs is how do we really look at businesses engaging itself? And the way businesses are engaging, are transforming itself is to saying, how do I extend ourselves to creating more value, not for itself, but also for its own customers, both on the acquisition journey as well as from its serviceable journey. When you do that, you have to create open capabilities, openness, but it's within a, I would say, framework and within boundary conditions. So that today, if you look at it, this whole API, microservices, ESB, enterprise service bus combination, is actually one of the crown jewels for any bank, any financial sector. So as long as you are able to understand as to put the right focus around it, right life cycle management associated with it, and make sure you have the team who understands and the partners with whom you participate to understand it the right way. The one big thing that I am all a fan of is move faster towards API becoming a product within a bank than it being just one more development that is happening across. Because if you keep developing APIs, I think at some point in time you lose track of what you're doing. It is about creating a much more structured ecosystem, which is the life cycle plus a product. If you do that, I think the pain will always be there. I think as tech evolves, you will have to go through these cycles of what we call it as upgrades, new technologies coming in. But it's about how we as CIOs are looking at it much more constructively to look ahead. Also, most important is for CIOs to balance it out with the increased and digitization is about risk management. Many a times, at least I come from a banking sector where risk is very important because we deal with money at the end of the day. So to be able to make sure that you don't treat risk, digital risk, as one more somewhere along the line. Like the security is always kept somewhere down till some shit hits you and then you look up. But otherwise you have to make it in line, which means how do you really make it in line with your actions is very, very important. So to me, I think a CIO's job is about not just about looking at its own technology, but looking at what's a strategy from a process perspective, from its efficiency perspective, from a risk management perspective, and very importantly is building a team that is ready for the future. And the team need not be just your team. That team could be a very talented ecosystem of partners that you could build with and make sure that they are a part of your journey and they are sort of helping you in your journey and being a stake in the play, in the game. You just, you have to evolve a lot of models around that. So to me, the people side, the process side and technology side, creating this whole API is now becoming our critical chains is very, very important. And then you will automatically see that a lot of peace is what you get. Because you know you're going to treat it that way. You know you have to work on that. And you know that you have a plan to make it to address. Otherwise, it's going to give you shocks quite often because today, you have too many stuff on the cloud. You have too many stuff that is getting, that's not getting managed effectively. So you have to put those guardrails to help. And I think a lot of the times I can add one more last thing is also about educating your partners on what you want. I think many a times I can say that, a lot of partners come across and say, I can do this A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I. Fantastic. But if you skin the surface a bit, dig it a bit deeper, then there is shallowness that you can see, both in terms of their capability, their competence. So I think these are some areas where a CIO has to be able to up its talent, the team, as well as its process and governance. Then I think we're still there. It's always evolving. I don't think it's never like I was telling someone, it's never a full stop, it's just a comma. So you have to see what goes after the comma to make sure it continues.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have time for maybe few questions here. If I did not get any question upfront, so anything which you guys have which you want to ask?
So my question is, since ONDC will create many opportunities for like a fintech players or other players, on the other side it will create a significant amount of threats for the marketplace business or the e-commerce business. So which are so-called like unicorns or like giants. So what is the reaction? Have you noticed any reaction on the ONDC as of now?
The reaction is, as I said, either this is the market expansion from our side, right? So, just for example, I'll take a name. Mishu, I think is a unicorn, I guess, coming on board ONDC. I said they're going to participate. Right? Today, when you put the might of the population, it's not my population, it's the India's population. If the platforms, if Mishu wants to discover eventually half a billion customers, it will come on board ONDC. It's a market forces that will decide it, for example, right? So I don't see this as a competition from them. Their reaction is participate. Some are observing, like they need to, and some are real startups, unicorns, which are really adopting very fast. Some are American startups in India, which are just going to take time because their headquarters has to give a lot of approvals.
But even though they will adopt, like their margins will shrink a lot basically, from like 20-30% to like a reduced.
I can't comment on their business models, yeah. That's for them to watch out. How can I comment? I mean, I'm also an investor. So that way, that separate hat of mine as an investor, I have to be worried. But if I'm an investor, I'm advising my startups to adopt rather than get disrupted. The choice is theirs.
Yeah. Any other
Thank you.
question? Any other question from the forum, please?
Yeah, hi. Am I audible?
Yeah, 100%
Yeah,
audible,
you are.
sir.
You are.
Yeah, okay. My question is, when do you see ONDC as a platform going to be counted as a credible alternative to the other platforms that are commercially available now? When is that this initiative of the government is going to stand up and say that I need to be counted?
Good question. Number one, Bertram kind of clarified. We are not a platform. Not a platform. Yeah, as a network, you're saying, as an ecosystem. As an ecosystem, when are we going to? I think I will give a very ambiguous answer because it's also dependent on the feedback we are getting. I gave a rough timeline. The timeline is the end of H1 or the starting of H2 of this year, that you will see ONDC being one of those dominant forces as an ecosystem that has arrived. We are already almost like 6 weeks into the year. So, in the next 20 weeks or so, plus or minus, because rollouts are happening at a rapid pace. Actually, 80 plus cities are alpha testing right now, right? We have 4 or 5 cities in beta testing. We want to make sure that this number goes up to 10 cities fully launched. But you have to remember one thing. For us, what does it mean to be nationally relevant? And the Prime Minister of the country is a very digital savvy person. For him and for the whole leadership team from the DPIIT to anybody who's behind ONDC, a few million people buying or selling doesn't cut the ice. Please remember that. So when only the number starts reaching 10 million, 50 million, 100 million consumers, then we feel that we are successful. So, and that's what I'm saying. The target is, if you combine the phone pays, the Paytms, the Spice Monies, all of them CSCs together, they have a combined audience of more than 500, 600 million people. So that's our audience already. So we have to just start selling to them. Our measure of success is number of transactions, like you see with UPI every month. We'll also be a subset of that. And 3, the amount of merchants we have onboarded, small merchants, the undigitized that we have digitized, And lastly, the number of people, new people we have brought into the ecosystem. So, and for any population scale platform, it needs to be population scale. I have the honorable minister, ex-minister from Jordan over here. He keeps joking with me. They have 10 million population. Right? For us in India, we don't, I mean, it's going to be successful when it reaches, it starts hitting the numbers of 50 million users, 100 million users. And that's the hope. So, as I said, next 20 weeks are crucial.
So I think we are done with time. I think we are just up. I know time is up for me. I think the next panel starts. So thank you. I think this is again one power panel I was really eager to listen to. I think we had the best and the most diverse panel here. I think, and they were also frank in their opinions. So thank you for your support, and thank you the audience for supporting us and sort of being there and sort of helping us. Thank you. Thank you.